Is generation, what do you say? Is Generation Z?
Yeah, like
That's
our generation is
no,
Z.
ours is X. We're
Okay.
X.
Yeah,
What's
yeah, yeah.
the younger version?
I think it
The
is Z.
next
Yeah,
Gen Z?
I think so.
Okay. I think, all right, this is a hot take. You ready for this?
Okay.
I think that they're the greatest generation ever in history. Ever. Period.
The one that's younger than ours?
Yeah. And I
I
think
would disagree.
I know you would because you're
How do
Generation
you know
X.
I would disagree?
Because every Generation X guy or girl says like every generation thinks that actually I think more than anybody Generation X feels like we're the greatest generation.
Yeah.
I think because we inspired a lot of thought. We did. And we came up with a lot of, you know, rebellious type of things. But my thought is that Generation Z changed everything. They changed money. They changed society. They changed, when I was growing up in the 80s, it was like, get a job with good benefits. Go to school. If you're smart enough, you go to university, you get a good job. But if you can't make it to university, you need to, you know, get a job with a plumbing company and have good benefits, or a utility company, and just get those benefits. Take care of your family. You get a loan, you go get some credit, you get a credit card, the bank teaches you how to manage your money. Like that was the way you were told was 100% absolute right. And you didn't like it as Generation X. We didn't like it. We hated the man, but we felt like we had to fall in line. And a lot of us did. But Generation Z was like, no, I'm going to play with Nerf guns. And at 12 years old, I'm going to make more than my parents combined. And then I'm going to go ahead and change that money to an electronic version of the dollar bill. And I'm going to be a makeup artist and at 15 buy my parents a home and the home next door for myself to live in. I'm going to change everything. And I'm not going to allow where I grew up, how I grew up, what money was involved, or what company. Now, back in the day, like when immigration was a huge thing in the States, like early on in the 1800s and the 1900s, you had people come over and start Coca-Cola, start Hershey. You had people start these giant companies. But for 4 generations, everybody just kind of fell in line. And if you weren't part of the, Hilton family, you didn't become huge and successful. But this generation was like, there's a story that somebody tells about, um, it's about poverty, and they describe a bunch of kids at a start line of a race, and they say before they start the race, have, okay, you everybody who's black, raise your hand, and then, okay, stay where you are. Everybody who doesn't have their hands raised, take 5 steps forward. And then, okay, if your parents make over $100,000, raise your hand. Okay, all of you, you take 10 steps forward. And they did this. And at the end, you had like 2 kids that were way in front of everybody else. And they said, okay, now start the race. And that's what life is like. Now, that used to be the case.
It's a great analogy.
It used to be the case.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, things like Ice Cube happened, where he was like, fuck you, I'm starting my own label. A couple little things. And Generation X was touching on the crest of it. It was like, very few percentage of people. Home Depot guy started Home Depot from nothing. There's a few of those situations that were like, okay, yes, that was what we're talking about. But it wasn't until Generation Z that they were like, we're going to take what you did and we're going to crank the volume, and 80% of us are going to do this shit.
So I'll give you a little bit of kudos for your Gen Z love. And I agree with you. And I'll say this. I think so for Gen X, we did things, or we tried to do things better than our parents.
Mm-hmm.
Gen Z tried to do it different.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, ours was still an old school approach, but we just did it. We tried to do it a little more refined,
Mm-hmm.
a little more of an open mind, try to make it better. Gen Z went the other direction. So I give them credit, and I give you credit for that. So let's say from 10 to 40,
Mm-hmm.
versus Gen Z's 10 to 40, ours had way more change in it, right?
Yeah.
Like we literally went from no internet to internet,
Bro,
and they went from internet to better internet, or from internet to better AI.
the
You know what I
only
mean? So
highlight of my day, like coming home from school, was putting Usher on my Walkman and getting home in time for Power Rangers.
yeah,
Like that was
yeah,
like the pinnacle of the day. And now you were overexposed to everything. And they took it, and instead of, so a lot of people come down on the generation because like, oh, they're always on their phone or always just doing this. But hold on, I think they're learning something. And Jordan Peterson says this. He says, "Don't stop kids from skateboarding." And for us, skateboarding is like, why would you ever stop a kid from skateboarding? It's the baddest motherfucking thing ever.
yeah,
But our parents looked at skateboarding like we look at them being on their phones all the time.
yeah.
And
And,
it's
and there's balance. Like we were at the park the other day, and I told because my daughter had her phone with her. She has a phone
Mhm.
for when she calls us for after school, like that kind of stuff. And I'm like, but you don't need it to go and play.
right.
So in that case, you're like, put it away and just go play.
And I think
And so I
that's
thought I
it.
was right, except sometimes they're on there and they're not just fucking around. Okay, they're doing a TikTok, whatever, but sometimes my daughter was learning about like photography.
Mm.
She was experimenting with different video and editing that video.
Mm-hmm.
So guess what you're going to need in most jobs going forward? Audio and video editing.
Mm-hmm.
Media has taken over. You don't have to just work for a media company. Every company in their marketing needs materials and that kind of stuff. So to your skateboarding point, maybe if I knew how to edit video at 10,
Mm-hmm.
I'd have different options at 20, 30, 40.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
it does. And
So
I
I give
think
them credit. I do have to give them credit.
they kind of said like when we were young, it was like I remember my dad was like kind of hard on like skateboarding and stuff, right? But now, if he saw like Tony Hawk's like net worth and stuff, he'd be like, "Wow, that guy did really good." And that's kind of the thing. It's like as kids, we were the smartest person to deal with what was coming up. Our parents weren't. They were 20 years behind. And it wasn't until Gen Z came along that they said, I don't think my parents are as smart as I can be. And that's a scary thing for a parent to hear or deal with. And you certainly don't want to preach that kids can go out and, whatever. But we're supposed to give them the tools. And like you said, to your point is like interject a little bit of like, hey, this is dinner. So we're going to put the phones out for dinner, and then prioritize your day, help them schedule out a day a little bit, but around their interests and their likes. So
Well, I think one generation sets the table for the next.
of
Our
course.
parents were the blue collar, meat grinding, just survive.
Mm-hmm.
Literally get up and survive the day. We took that to advance it a little bit further for more personal growth and wealth. And then Gen Z took it that next level. And I think what's important is knowing that each generation sets the table for the next. But we need elements of all the generations for balance. So I'm not a fan of kids having dinner in their room.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have to sit at the table as a family and have dinner.
Yeah.
Maybe that's old school. Maybe I'm right. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
In just my personal opinion, I feel that's the only time the family gets to kind of sit and converse.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of an old school element where you could then mix in the other stuff. So it's like, let's eat dinner together.
Mm-hmm.
But when you go outside on your skateboard or whatever, if you want to like tape yourself while you're doing it to do a boomerang or something, go ahead.
Right.
Because you're learning something.
Yeah, I think
You're
there is a lot of an element to the superhero villain situation, right? Like if Superman won every single time and he was never fucked up with kryptonite or anything like that, then it would be the boringest comic show movie ever. You'd be like, this guy's like winning in life.
Because it's entertaining.
Great.
Triumph.
Yeah, triumph. So you have to have some yin to the yang. And so when kids, if you would just let them free and just say, do whatever the fuck you want to do, I don't care, they're going to be tyrants. They're going to be disasters. So yeah, the guidance is definitely important. I guess we should put that as like a warning label on my comment that they're smart. But not in. And again, it's not a smart like a book smart. I just think that they're smart because they're savvy. They got the whole entrepreneurial thing. That gene came through on them, and they just fucking turned it. Like
And I think it's the technology.
for sure.
They
Yeah.
could learn stuff quicker than you and I did.
Yeah.
Way quicker than our parents did. So
Mhm.
it's true like that. It's like the Industrial Revolution, how that changed
Well, that's what I mean.
everything. Now it's the technology revolution or the internet revolution or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and they're doing things right now that we're looking at like, what are you doing? But caveat here, the Wright brothers were like flying around with feathers and fucking wings and shit, and people were going, "What the hell are you doing?" But now we're flying to Belize because of them. Like we're traveling
People
all
still
over
don't
the
know how
world.
they made those pyramids.
Well, yeah, that's a whole nother ballgame, and I guess that's kind of the
You know,
turn.
you're right. Each generation they have their own innovation.
Right, and that was in a time when one person kind of talked a lot of people into being to doing one thing, and now we have a lot of people being individuals and doing their own thing, which I think I don't know. I think it's powerful. I think it's really cool to see what's happening. I'm so excited because essentially the percentage, in my opinion, of Einsteins out there is way higher now than it ever was in history.
Agreed.
Where you have a lot of people who are just not gonna fall in line. They're like, fuck you, I'm an artist today. I'm gonna spray paint fucking brick walls and I'm gonna video it and I'm gonna make money at it. And something that you did because you hated your parents, I'm gonna do it and I'm gonna make a business from it. And you're like, damn, that's pretty fucking dope. All right, guys, thanks for stopping in. As always, this has been the Talford Podcast, and this is shit that I wish I heard when I was young. Like, subscribe, follow YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, all the socials. You know where to go. DM me with any questions or subjects that you want me to talk about. I'd be more than happy to indulge you. Once again, this has been the Talford Podcast, and now it is time for me to get back to work.